Ladies and gentlemen, from the creator of Sinister Bunny Studios, this is the Metal Brain Podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Metal Brain Podcast. Today's episode is going to be basically a solo episode where you get to just hear me blab for the next 45 minutes to an hour, or however long this ends up being. I'm not exactly sure. When I get done talking is when it'll basically be done. Like I said, I don't have a guest for this episode, unfortunately, but things are still a little weird getting a hold of people in terms of my free time outside of my job and all my priorities and prior obligations at home with my girlfriend and my dog. So there's just not a lot of time anymore for me to be like, hey, let's get you guys all lined up. Each person do, multiple hours of a podcast. It's just, it's not feasible all of the time. But, it's nice every once in a while for me to just get to talk and say things to you guys that maybe I wouldn't otherwise mention because I'm talking with another individual and my mind just doesn't go to that place. Today I kind of, I'm just going to talk about the journey that I have taken in terms of my hobbies, and more specifically about music and video that all ties into YouTube and now the Metal Brain Podcast and all that fun kind of stuff. It's been a long journey. It's been a crazy journey. I probably mentioned a handful of things in the very first episode of this podcast, which was basically my introduction of who I am. And I believe I talked a little bit about like where I come from and some of the things that just make me who I am. So if you don't already know by now, which if you've been listening in quite frequently, you should know by now, but I am a high school and college graduate. I am a guitar player. I write metal music. A lot of times it's more progressive metal music. And a long time ago, I decided that I wanted to dip my hand and dip my toes into some other fields of media, which included video. I never got too much into the world of like photography, but video I most definitely did. I remember having a camcorder, a digital, not even a camcorder. It was a little digital camera that my dad had given me to fuck around with. And I remember making these little videos and movies with my brother that were just really stupid and just all around just really stupid. And it was just the beginnings of what was going to turn out to be my little adventure here with social media, making videos and making music. So it began quite some time ago, and that very first camera that I was using was really terrible. It was like one of those throwaway kind of cameras, I believe. I mean, it was really cheaply made. It didn't record in any feasible resolution. It was a camera that recorded some kind of image, and I ran with it, doing all sorts of weird videos, and I used that thing for quite a long time. And the funny thing is, I believe I still have all of those old recordings and pictures that I took on that camera stored somewhere on a hard drive that I don't remember which exactly it is because I have many. But I do have the files from that camera because I don't know if there's been a time where I've ever deleted much footage. I might have back in the day a little more than I do now, but when I record videos or projects or anything, most of the time, like the raw footage is just sitting stagnant in a hard drive somewhere. Like I just don't get rid of it. And it builds and builds and builds and builds. And right now I've got like a 5 terabyte hard drive that is about full. I think I have like 130 gigs left on it, and most of it has been all the files, all the music files, the project files, the video files, the final video files, multiple edits, multiple mixes, all sorts of different files for my YouTube channel, Sinister Bunny Studios. And I just never get rid of them. I probably should have, but I feel like I'm super late into trying to organize that. It would be such a pain in the ass to go back, find all of the raw footage, and be like, delete, 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 which maybe I should, so I don't have to buy a bunch of new hard drives. But I don't know. It's almost like the same feeling that I have with journals. Like this summer, I recently finished up a journal of mine that had taken me like 6 years to fill up, and I've just started on a new one. And when you finish a journal, I don't want to go back and erase everything that I wrote to get a brand new notebook. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't make sense to me. It's something that you want to have archived, basically, and I don't want to just get rid of that stuff. And it's problematic, I know, because it takes up a lot of space. And now that I'm recording in 4K resolution, it takes up even more space. I get it. I'm just going to inevitably buy more and more hard drives. Who knows? Maybe when I get this new hard drive and just start fresh, maybe I can do that, where I can get my project finished, get it uploaded where it needs to be, keep the most important files, and delete the rest. But the problem with that is I'm going to have to transfer old files from my other hard drive to that new drive, because I have a lot of music and stuff and projects that I started that are not finished. If I finished everything that is on that hard drive in terms of projects and songs and stuff, then I can most definitely get a brand new hard drive, start fresh, take my old one, pack it away somewhere, and be done with it. And I'm sure that would be a great fucking feeling. But the odds of that happening are so goddamn slim, unfortunately. But to bring it back around to that camera, it didn't take very long for the camera to stop working, I believe. I believe it broke somehow. But I mean, I was running around with it outside with my brother. We were doing all sorts of stupid shit with it. It got beat to hell. And this, again, was cheap. This was not some fancy camera. It was cheap. Plastic, super low resolution, cheap. And I wish I could find it just so I knew what kind of camera it was, but I don't think I'm ever going to find it again. It's probably sitting somewhere buried away at my dad's house, and it's probably going to stay there forever until all that shit gets removed. And that's just the life of it, I guess. But even with that, I have old videos of myself playing guitar on that. And I found that one day back recently when it came out that Eddie Van Halen had passed away. I had an old video of myself when I was first learning guitar trying to play the tapping section from Van Halen's Eruption. And that was cool to reminisce with. And that's exactly why I keep footage like that with different cameras and stuff that I record on, because I was able to look back on that and go, damn, I can see how far I've come. This is pretty goddamn cool. And not too long after that, I'm not sure exactly how much time had passed, but the next step up in my camera journey, I somehow bought a Sony DSC H300, I think is the model that it was. Yeah, I think a Sony DSH or DSC H300, I believe, was the model of the camera. It had a fixed lens. It did zoom. It shot 720p video, and it was clunky as all hell. It was a bulky camera that honestly was kind of my big first steps into the world of what I do now. Now, with this camera, I started doing bigger and more complicated projects. I don't know what the first thing I shot on it was, because I believe there is a bridge between that Sony camera and the small digital camera that was cheaply made. There was a bridge in between there where I was using my phone to make a lot of videos. I even went as far as to editing videos on my phone. Like the shots that I would make on my phone, I would stitch them together with some kind of application that would allow me to do that. And sometimes the front and end of each shot would be kind of longer than it should be because I couldn't really go in and trim them in any sort of way other than the timing of when I hit record and stop on the initial shooting of that scene with my phone. But the bigger projects came with that Sony camera. And one of the coolest ones that I ended up shooting was with my buddy Daniel, who you have had listened to on this podcast if you have listened to the prior episodes to this one. And we called it Sammy the Clown. Now, it was a kind of arbitrary plot. It was just an excuse to create a dark, action, scary kind of movie, short film, video, whatever you want to call it. It was like 5 minutes. And it was the project that I'd say we were probably most proud of, even though it was in 720p, no manual settings with the camera. It was all auto, and it just looked, in terms of resolution, really bad. So basically, this little video, short film, whatever you want to call it, that we had created was a weird story about a prisoner that had escaped who was some kind of mass murderer. He wore a clown mask and carried a hatchet. And we wanted this to be an action-y horror type of film. And so we had it where this clown serial killer guy escaped prison and somehow found his way to my house and ended up getting the drop on me inside my house. He snuck in and started chasing me around, and we ran around, we ran outside, we got into a scuffle where we were fist fighting, which was one of the biggest parts as to why we were so proud, or at least I was so proud of this little film that we made, because we kind of choreographed this fight scene, and I had tried a new trick that I had learned from some film tip channel on YouTube. It was probably like Film Riot, and it was about cutting frames out of the video before a punch lands on someone's face or body to make it seem like it's a harder impact and it's faster. And holy shit, does that work. And you tie that in with a good hit sound, oh man, it makes for some good action impact hits. And so we choreographed this fight scene where I am fighting this killer clown, and it was really cool. Obviously, we're not like martial artists or anything like that, but I think the way we did it worked out pretty well. It ends up where I run back into my house through the front door. He's chasing after me, and the camera is following behind him, and he turns a corner, and bam, I clothesline him in the face from around the corner. Big surprise hit, and knock him unconscious. Goes to black, comes back out. I've got him tied up in a chair, and I'm interrogating him on who he is and yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden, somebody else is in the house that picks up the hatchet that he dropped from when I fucking clotheslined him in the kitchen and slowly walks over. And I have no idea, as I'm interrogating this killer clown and this man with a baby mask and the clown's hatchet, walks up, stabs me in the back, helps his buddy up, and walks out. And the end credit scene is a slow zoom out of my dead body bleeding on the floor. And that is a very short summary of probably a 5 or 6 minute video, but it had a beginning, middle, and end, and I was proud of it. I mean, I did most of the editing and the kind of directing of what it was going to look like and getting the shots. Because at the very beginning of it, it was just my buddy Daniel who played the clown and myself. And so the shots that he was in, I was using the camera to shoot. And the shots that I was in, he was using the camera to shoot. So we were never really in the same shot together until we got my brother involved halfway through. And he was able to get some of the shots with both Daniel and I. So it was a definite joint effort, and it turned out really well. In terms of the execution, quality was shit. Execution, I think, was pretty good, and it turned out pretty close to the way that I had wanted at the time. And we also did some other side project things that were never like finished projects, a lot of like to be continued type of things, and those were really cool. And I would love to dive back into that stuff and just start making short films that I wanted to make back then, because I have so much more knowledge of editing and filmmaking in general. Like, I could do so much better and so much more that I could do back then. And it went even as far as me using that camera to take a filmmaking class at my high school as like an elective, and using it to make the film projects that we were shooting and all that fun stuff. And, you know, that was kind of boring to me because it was like very kind of strict on what we had to do. So you need to make a film about an inanimate object. And it's like, what the fuck is that? I don't want to make a film about an inanimate object. Like, that doesn't seem cool to me. I get it's artsy, but that's not what I'm about. I'm not about fucking, you know, pretentious artsy fartsy types of films, and not to take away from any kind of films that do that really well, but it's just, that's not my thing. I need action, I need horror, I need creep factor, I need like darkness. That's my vibe for making films. And I just really could not do that in that class. There were a handful of projects that we did, and the inanimate one was probably my better one, because I told the story of a G.I. Joe that I had that was like a 12-inch G.I. Joe, like a foot tall, old school kind of G.I. Joe. And I can't remember the guy's name. It's like Destro or something. It's a dude with a metal head. And it was basically a story where I was like coming back from college and cleaning out my old toys, and went to throw them in like a donation box and overshot because I wasn't paying attention and threw him over my back, and he went out the window, and somebody ended up picking him up and taking him, and it was just this whole weird kind of video, and it was interesting to shoot. It was for a school project, obviously. I don't think I really learned anything in that class in terms of editing or filmmaking or anything like that. I definitely didn't learn any kind of lighting. I didn't learn any kind of composition. I didn't learn any kind of story making. Like, it was just kind of a fuck all class, and no hit on to the teacher who was leading it. I think he was having all sorts of fun with it, but it didn't tickle my fancy the way that I was hoping it would have. And I've learned so much more from just doing shit myself through YouTube in terms of lighting myself, which I'm still not perfect at, but I've got ideas of how to make things look cool, look good. Lighting, composition, how do your shots look? Do they look good? Do they look off? Is it like stylized? Is it fucking weird? Like, all of that stuff is really important, and you can't just go around with a handheld camera and shooting stuff. And it's been done before. That's a look, the action cam, like Cloverfield type of thing. But that's stylized and on purpose. You can't use it as an excuse of, oh yeah, it's supposed to look like that. No. It wasn't. It's just amateur, which is fine. You have to start somewhere. But that class just didn't really do it for me, honestly. And eventually, we graduated high school, and probably, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 24 videos were made with that camera after that, in terms of a side little channel that my buddy Daniel and I had made in regards to our band that we had at the time. And we were doing like covers and stuff like that and uploading them to YouTube and doing that whole kind of thing. We didn't do a crazy lot with it. I started recording videos for Sinister Bunny Studios shortly after I graduated and had started college. And I think the very first the very first video that I recorded with that old Sony camera that was a part of technically Sinister Bunny Studios was a series I had created called Dose of Metal, to get your dose of metal for the day. And it was basically just short songs that I had written to give you a little dose of metal for your day. As stupid as it sounds. And I think I made like 3 of those and recorded those with that camera. And then I started a measly like gaming YouTube channel that shall not be spoken of again because it was just terrible and cringy, and I just wish I would have started doing Sinister Bunny Studios at that time instead of wasting all that time on the gaming shit that was never going to happen. And after I had started that gaming channel, I had posted those Dose of Metal videos originally to that channel, and it got so much more attention. The music videos of my guitar playing got so much more attention than any of the gaming videos that I had done. Like, they weren't even close. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll make a separate YouTube channel about my music stuff. I still want to make music. That was my biggest passion. Filmmaking was, a secondary passion. Maybe not secondary, but it's up there. Music is my number one. But I was like, I need to start a different channel that like I can post the music stuff to, so I can keep them separate. Because I think I had some knowledge of how YouTube worked, where you need to be kind of niche to reach an audience and gain any kind of traction. And so I think that's part of what I was trying to do, and it just made more sense to kind of get them separate. And so I figured out what I was going to do. I came up with a name. I created Sinister Bunny Studios, and then I think the last video that was ever shot on that old Sony camera was the Mary Had a Little Lamb heavy metal cover that I had recorded and set to be my debut video on Sinister Bunny Studios in the summer of 2017, I think it was. And that, I think, was the end of that camera, because I started switching to my phone because my phone's quality was 1,000,000 times better than that camera at the time. And so my Sinister Bunny Studios journey started. The old gaming channel died. I killed it off. And I started pursuing the more musical side of my YouTube journey, which I think is a better fit, obviously, than a fucking gaming channel. Like, that's not me. I love video games, but that's not fucking me in any way. I was just trying to be cool. I was trying to see and experiment, and it didn't work. But it led to me doing Sinister Bunny Studios, so I guess it was maybe worth it. In the end, I think I went and moved out of the dorms and into my own apartment, and then shot a handful of videos on my phone, and then scrounged up some money and bought my first decent video camera, which was the Sony Alpha 5100, which I still have because it is a good camera. It for 1080p or taking pictures, it's a good camera, and I keep it as like a B cam, an extra camera to get other shots to lay around. I'm not going to get rid of it. And then the journey really started. I started shooting so much with that, learning how to use it because there was more manual controls. It had an interchangeable lens, which I didn't really get into using different lenses for a while until I had a company send me one. And then I spent so long with that camera, and I did all sorts of different kinds of videos. And I wish I could go back to that and tap into that inspiration that I had at that time, because as of right now, that inspiration is not there. Not like it was. I just really wish I could tap back into that energy of like drive and perseverance. And I know I can do it. I know it's there, but it's hard to tap into that sometimes. It's been a crazy fucking almost 2 years with the whole, bad thingy that happened. And then everything just kind of started taking off more from there. I just was using it all the time. I was learning ways to shoot with the camera. I was using like my lamps that I had, like a living room corner lamp to light myself for quite a while. And then I invested in like the umbrella tent, like in the fucking glass bulb lighting kit that's really meant for photography. But with the LED lights that we have now, you don't really need the bulbs, I don't think, unless there's a professional reason why you should use bulbs. But they're huge and bulky, got in the way. They got the job done, but they were so in the way. And eventually I found a company called Neewer that had some LED lights that looked a million times better, and they were more compact, and they're bicolor. And so I sold the other lights that I had and bought these newer ones that I used for a lot of videos. And ever since then, I've gotten sent a whole bunch of different lights, like little lights, all sorts of different lights. I got sent some like big, expensive video lights that are also RGB and all that crazy kind of shit. So like in terms of lighting equipment, that stuff took a while to get going because I didn't realize how important it was. But once it did, the ball started rolling pretty quick. And I still get companies trying to send me lights and stuff. And usually it's like the smaller lights that you can attach onto your camera or, light up your studio in different ways. And it's cool. I have the ones that I like. I don't really need many more. But that's a whole nother conversation. Companies sending products, like that's a whole other podcast that I can probably make. But getting back to like the whole journey with that, like I went through shitty camera after shitty camera after shooting shitty video after learning how to edit different ways, going from using Sony Vegas to edit video, which was just terrible, and switching over to I think I went directly from Sony Vegas to what I use still, which is HitFilm. And yeah, it's not the most professional. It's a free version of it, but I can do so much with it. I can do everything that I need to do, and it's free. So I'm not going to really complain. It's really user-friendly. It's really great. I've loved it for the last couple of years. But I've come pretty far in terms of the things that I've learned about making content. And, it's not like I've had a huge success or anything like that by any means yet. But it's crazy to go back and think about how far I've come from where I started. Because I started with a really shitty plastic camera that recorded like 144p and shooting stupid videos of flying toys and jumping down the stairs with my brother, to full-fledged, like, self-shot music videos for my instrumental music, my own personal original music, and my heavy metal covers of, different songs, and any other kind of videos that I want to make. I have strong passions for both music and for film. And YouTube is a great way to combine those two. And I've been obsessed with it ever since. And I've had people, complain that I'm obsessed with it in the past, especially when I was doing the gaming channel, because I was trying to post Monday through Friday. I was a bit obsessed. And I think it's good to be obsessed. But you burn a lot of bridges and you push a lot of people out when you obsess over something like that. And so I've always tried to kind of balance that. But that obsession has not gone away. And it's not an obsession with making money by any means. Like, the money is secondary. If it was about the money, I would have quit doing it a long time ago, because it's not like I make a shit ton of money from what I do at this point right now anyway. But it's the feeling of creation that I'm obsessed with. It could be anything. Making another short film, recording a podcast like I am now, writing a song, recording a cover, shooting the video for the cover. Like, that is what gets me going. That creative itch needs to be itched. And I don't know any other way to put it. And does that mean I'm obsessed? Sure. I am obsessed in the sense that I want to create really fucking cool shit, and I want people to see it or hear it. Is that so wrong of me? Is it maybe slightly narcissistic? Sure. I think anybody who does anything with social media or just media in general has to have some kind of narcissistic tendencies to do that in the first place, because not everybody just goes, yeah, I think my music's good enough for people to hear. Yeah, I think my videos are good enough that people should watch it. Because otherwise, who are you making stuff for? And I'm sure there's people out there that make things just for themselves, and that's totally fine. But I think a majority of people who are involved in content creation have a slight narcissistic side to them, because you want people to experience whatever it is that you create, and you want them to like it. You want them to give you the attention and validation that you seek by creating whatever content it is that you create. And I'm fine with that. And again, does that make me obsessed because I want people to see my stuff? Maybe. But I don't really care, because that's what makes me happy. Making videos, making music, making anything. That is where my big time happiness lies. And I don't know if it's just because I had a weird childhood, or if I don't know where the creative thing comes from, because my immediate family isn't necessarily in that same kind of world. It's not like, oh, I've got a mom who's a musician, or a dad that's a musician, or like filmmakers or writers or anything like that. The only immediate family member that is involved in that creative process thing is my brother. And that's it. He is the only one that I can think immediately that is involved with creation, kind of how I am. Not to the extent that I am, but it's still there. I don't come from a musical family. I don't come from a filmmaking family. I don't know where it came from. I'm not one of those people that was watching YouTube and was like, I want to be famous like that. YouTube was the outlet for me to get people to see my stuff. Now, I'm sure that sounds confusing. Like, well, isn't wanting to be famous and wanting people to see a lot of people to see your stuff the same thing? I don't think so. I want a lot of people to see my stuff and listen to my stuff, but I don't necessarily want to be elevated to a status of famous, if that makes sense. I just want to do what I do and for people to hear it or see it. And that's just it. And I'm not obsessed with the money. Like, again, if I was obsessed with the money, I would have quit a long time ago. Now, I mean, I make a little bit of money now, but I've been doing this for years. Like, it's been a slow grind for years. And, you know, it's the least ROI, return on investment, that I've probably had on anything. And that's fine. I've accepted the losses. I've gained some back by getting free products and shit like that. But it's overall still a net loss in the long term for now. And that's fine. Because the journey to create something cool and say that I made that is enough for me to continue doing it. And it's not that hard for me to explain a lot of this, but it is hard to find the right words because I don't want to sound like an asshole as I explain this stuff. And I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that understand, feel very similarly to how I do. And maybe there's some of you that don't, and you just think I'm a fucking nutcase. And that's fine too. But this is the journey that I have taken and short over the last 4 or 5 years. Now, like I said way earlier, I really wish I had started the whole YouTube thing with Sinister Bunny Studios way before I did. But hindsight is always 20/20. You can't change it. And it is what it is. If it weren't for the other stuff that I did, I probably would not have Sinister Bunny Studios. So who knows? Fate could have been very different than it is now. It could have been better, it could have been worse. I'll never know. There's probably alternate universes where I was amazingly successful in everything and got ultra famous and became a multi-trillionaire. And then there's the other one that just nothing ever happened. I'm sure it exists there. If you believe in that whole multiverse theory, which I think is a nice thing to think about. But again, that's another topic for another day. But the journey that I have taken has been a very interesting one. I've been through a lot of craziness outside of that creative process, and I don't ever see myself stopping. I see myself as on my deathbed with my guitar, playing music like this is my death song. Goodbye to the world. Fuck you all. Here's my final goodbye. And just rip a fucking solo. And then die immediately after. Like die in a harmonized pitch that's harmonized with the heart rate monitor when it goes beep. Hit a really high note and harmonize with that. And die. That's the way to go. But I think that's as far as I'll go for today. It's very hard to sum up a lot of these years into a short form conversation that's mostly improvised. But obviously, as these podcasts continue to come out, you'll learn more and more about me, and I can fill in the gaps. And probably other people that come on the podcast that like either grew up with me or know me really well, they can also fill in some of the gaps too. So look forward to that. I do have guests coming up, so be ready for that. Follow the podcast on Spotify and Anchor and anywhere else that podcasts are available. And follow the Metal Brain Podcast on Instagram to keep updated with when episodes are coming out. Any behind the scenes information and any cool announcements for anything. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'll catch you on the next one. Stay metal, my friends.